Hi, everyone. Hello, and welcome to the course launch party for Sean McGowan's new online Fingerstyle Jazz Guitar School at ArtistWorks. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Marcus Luscombe. I'm the head of production at ArtistWorks. And before we get started, just wanted to let you know, check out the link in the description of the event here. We're doing a really awesome giveaway, and you can enter to win for free. Tons of new prizes to celebrate the launch. We're giving away a Henriksen Blue 6 amplifier, great guitar amp, a Vidami pedal, which is like a foot controller pedal that allows you to like play, start, stop, set loops, control the speed on videos. So while you're practicing and learning with video, you can do that hands-free with a foot pedal. Really cool thing. We're also giving away a bunch of Sean's signature fingerstyle jazz guitar strings from American National String Company, and multiple subscription packages to join the new Fingerstyle Jazz Guitar School. So you can start your journey learning directly from Sean and get direct video feedback on your playing with Video Exchange. Please check in on the comments today. Tell us where you're viewing from. We always love to hear where people are tuning in from. And we're also going to be taking your questions a little later in the show. So please drop those in the comments too at any time, and we'll try and get to as many as we can as we go. All right, so that's the housekeeping out of the way. Please welcome Sean McGowan. Hey, Sean.
Hey, Marcus. Hey, everybody out there. How are you?
Great to see you.
It's great to see you too. And it's great to, I guess, feel the presence of everybody that's joined in online. I can't see you, but I'm feeling the love there. So yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, excellent. Where are you tuning in from today, Sean?
Denver, Colorado. Very
cool. I'm in St. Petersburg, Florida myself. So both sunny days in both spots, I hear.
Yeah, and as Marcus mentioned, we'd love to hear your comments. Write those in, where you're coming from, and what you'd like to hear about today. And I think we're going to kick things off with some music.
Yeah, why don't you take it away?
All right.
Wow, bravo.
Thanks.
That was amazing.
Thanks.
So tell us what was all of that? That was a whole bunch of stuff there.
A whole bunch of stuff going on, yeah. And so that is a song called All Blues by Miles Davis from his landmark album Kind of Blue, 1959, amazingly. And I think many people agree that if you could just have like one perfect jazz album, it would be that one. It's such a great recording. And so many years ago, I heard, of course, people, when you're playing with a band, lots of people play that and so many other songs on that record. And I heard a really cool version by Kenny Burrell on his Handcrafted album. He played it with an acoustic guitar. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. I just love the way he's arranging it with his trio. I'm going to just try that as a solo piece, And a lot of times the impetus for my arrangements will just start from a recording or a song from a recording that I just really love, and then I ask myself, like, well, what would that sound like, for solo guitar? And so then begins the challenge of like trying to hit all of those parts and get the horn lines and the moving bass line and all of that stuff. So gradually you just come up with, I mean, it's a lot of fun. I think I love it. You come up with different techniques. So what I was doing, to try to approximate this ostinato thing that Bill Evans does, and then just the vibe of that tune is so cool when it starts off. And so, this is a perfect example of like problem solving, I guess. if the left hand is doing the Bill Evans ostinato figure, how are you going to play the bass? So that's when I started playing, like the bass with like the right hand fretting and tapping and things like that. And so I think for me, like a quick glimpse into my early influences, I always loved jazz and, traditional jazz guitar players, but I also really loved the fingerstyle school, which at that time for me was like the guitar players on the Windham Hill record label. So people like Michael Hedges and Alex DeGrassi, certainly, and Will Ackerman, and later on Tuck Andrus. And all of those guitar players were, they were using extended techniques, certainly Michael Hedges, right, to capture a lot of music that they wanted to hear and convey on the guitar. And also, I think when I was starting to play out, there were people like Stanley Jordan on the scene. His is a completely different approach. It's like all pianistic, but just the point being that you can grab all of those influences technically to try to make the music happening. So that's what was going on with the intro, and then just capturing those horn lines. And then once you get that groove happening, then you can put Miles Davis's trumpet melody on top. And so I think in a solo guitar, from a solo guitar standpoint, one of the things that I'm always after, which has been I've been influenced by classical guitarists in this way, is try to have a distinction of articulation, and that's something that we talk about quite a bit in this Fingerstyle Jazz Guitar course on ArtistWorks. And that, so if we have like more of a short, and then keeping that melody line that you have to use the pinky for, keeping that sustained while you have the moving parts under it. So you want to try to get those notes as long as possible, in the same way that a trumpet in this case would, or a singer or something like that. And that takes that takes a little bit of work, because it's all happening with just the four fingers on one hand. But to that end, I've designed a ton of exercises and etudes and things like that will help you develop that kind of independence. So when you go to play a solo guitar arrangement, it sounds, I think, multi-dimensional. Alex DeGrassi calls it three-dimensional, and I think that's what we want to do, is create the illusion of maybe more than one player or more than one instrument. And so obviously it's all going to sound like a guitar, but you can use techniques such as harmonics, like I was doing in the intro there, just setting up a feel, certainly extended techniques, and those different articulation, like long notes versus shorter notes underneath them. And those are some of the things that you can get into to create a more, I think, complex solo guitar performance and arrangement.
Yeah, fantastic. And these are a lot of topics covered in your course. Just before we dive into a little bit more about like what you covered and some of the details of your course, we had a question that seems like a pertinent place to kick it off, which is, what would you say the student's skill level should be to take the course? Like, tell us a little bit about like what is in the course and who it's for.
Sure. Yeah. Hey, Greg, thanks. That's a great question. So we really we had an intention of making this course really approachable for anybody. So I think when I was designing the curriculum, I wanted it to be accessible to all players, and that can mean a lot of different people. So, like for fingerstyle jazz, for example, That might be somebody that has played some fingerstyle blues, right? So they're used to playing with their fingers. Maybe they've done some Travis picking. Maybe they've studied some classical guitar, but they haven't delved into jazz quite yet. They're not quite sure how to improvise or how to create an arrangement or how to take their fingerstyle technique from blues or classical or, you know, modern contemporary fingerstyle, whatever it is, and put it in a jazz setting. Similarly, there are a lot of jazz players, but only play with a pick. So maybe fingerstyle, you know, from a technical standpoint is new to them. So we really like start this course out on the ground floor. So it's just like real basic and workable chord voicings. Okay, this is how you can get a chord progression happening so that if you open up, you know, a book of standards, like a real book or a fake book or whatever, or if you're just learning a song by ear, you have instantly the chord voicings that you'll need to be able to play the harmony for that. And then there's also a bunch of exercises that are designed to do just that. And I would say the exercises is really trying to be thoughtful or mindful in that they're exercises that are great for beginners and advanced players. So for example, a lot of, you know, intermediate to advanced players, they have chops, and some of the things that we work on in this course are exercises that maybe they've never done before or hadn't thought about because you know, they're just different, and they're developing things that are very specific to solo guitar or playing duo with somebody else. Let me give you an example of that. So a lot of times when people work on technique, they might work on an etude or a specific technique like alternate picking or directional picking or whatever it is. And a lot of that might be oriented around scales or arpeggio exercises. And one of the many exercises that we have in this course is just a sustain exercise. So you can take a simple C major seventh chord and then work on sustaining one voice while the others are staccato like this. And then being able to manipulate the voices to sustain. So now I can have the alto part or the B note sustain. And maybe the third note down, you know, the treble or the tenor part rather. And then finally the bass. And so we do a lot of, you know, different exercises in the course that I think are very accessible to beginners new to this style, but also very usable and practical for more intermediate and advanced players. So and the way that we're rolling out the curriculum is there's material there for beginners, there's material there for intermediate and advanced. And throughout the course of the year, I believe we're going to be continuing to roll out the curriculum in those various, more or less 3 levels.
Awesome. Yeah, another question here too. I know that this is something you touched on, so just a minute on this, but about hybrid picking too, sort of bridging that gap between fingerstyle and picking. Can you talk a little bit about what that covers and what you have for students in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. So hybrid is a big part. I mean, that's a technique that I do. And full disclosure, I do use a pick. So, you know, this is a fingerstyle jazz curriculum, but there's stuff in here for everybody. So hybrid picking, yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, really the ultimate goal for all of us is to become better musicians, better guitar players. And so, you know, learning new techniques and harmonic concepts or rhythmic concepts, that all serves the one purpose of making us better. And so a lot of the techniques that we get into throughout the course are totally usable for hybrid players. I mean, that's a great, you know, so a lot of, whether you're using an actual flat pick with the fingers, or a lot of people like to use a thumb pick in tandem with the fingers, those are all fine. You know, that will allow you to do, you know, like, for example, things like this. You could totally do that with, you know, using hybrid picking. Many great solo guitar players use the pick quite a bit, like Jimmy Bruno comes to mind. And so, yeah, absolutely. Hybrid pickers are welcome. If you've only ever used a flat pick, even to play solo guitar, this is a great course for you as well, because a lot of the musical material is totally applicable, whether you're playing with your fingers or with a pick or with hybrid. It's just that a lot of the technical things are really geared towards the development of fingerstyle playing, and just get accustomed to that.
Very cool. Yeah, and that's one of the nice things too, just like the sight tools, being able to take the examples that you set out and like adjust the speeds, for example, see it in multiple angles. We've got like an angle just tight in on your right hand at all times. So really helpful to like sort of digest some of that stuff along with like the written material, so you can actually like see what the notes are on the sheet as well.
Yeah, totally. And I can also tell you that I've already done a few video exchanges with students that are accustomed to using hybrid picking. And they'll ask, do you have any advice on how to hold the pick or how to articulate this using hybrid technique? And yeah, absolutely. I do a lot of that myself. So all that to say that everybody's welcome. We don't silo anything by technique or by style or anything. It's all good. And so students have already sent me videos on hybrid picking, which I've responded to with a video exchange.
Very cool. Well, I know it's going to come up. Someone's going to ask, what is that guitar in your hand? And somebody also just posed the question, what's a preferable guitar to practice with? Like, any advice for students that want to sign up? Is there a certain kind of guitar they need to take the lessons? And a little bit about your guitar, please.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. I've already had that question come up from emails of students of the class. So regarding a guitar, any guitar will work. I have students already in this ArtistWorks class. We've done video exchanges that play nylon string guitars, that play steel string guitars, or arch tops, or even solid bodies. It's all good. I mean, I think there's no specific guitar that you need for this course. I can tell you for the most part, we're going to be in standard tuning. There is a section of lessons on there that we're going to get into later that will be just a few thoughts on alternate tunings. But for the most part, yeah, if it's got 6 strings on it, tuned to standard tuning, you're in business. You're ready to go. That's all you need. And then about this guitar, this is a beautiful cadenza model arch top. And I'll just hold up so you can see it. I'm trying to get the glare. This is an LHT guitar that's made by a great luthier named Tyler Wells in California. And this guitar quite a bit in the filming the curriculum in the studios down in Florida. I alternated between this guitar and a Gibson Tal Farlow model, which I really love. But this guitar is really great because it's very acoustic sounding, right? So you can... has a really beautiful acoustic sound. And if you can kind of see it from your camera, the holes are actually here, which is kind of a unique design. So instead of having traditional F holes, the sound holes are up here. And that's a real satisfying thing for the player, because now you can hear all the sound coming right under your ears. A cool story about this guitar, I'll just show you here real quick. The back and sides are made from, there we go, myrtle wood. It's a really beautiful. So this was salvaged by Tyler. Lives in Northern California, just beyond the Napa Valley region. And he was driving along one day with a friend, and he actually, they saw this piece of myrtle wood, and they harvested it by the side of the road. It was just sitting there, and it allowed him to make these beautiful back and sides with myrtle wood. So that's a great thing about Tyler and a lot of luthiers that really build you like these bespoke guitars, right? They're one-offs. Is that they can really experiment with a lot of materials that make for a great experience playing. So anyway, Tyler is at lhtguitars.com if you want to check him out. It's great stuff.
Awesome. And we knew this was going to come up because you say that this comes up quite a lot, and fair enough. Here's the question. So we might as well talk about this now. Tell us about your fingernails.
No nails whatsoever. In fact, I got home and they were like getting a little, and I was like, just clipped them because, so I don't use fingernails at all. I never have. And the reason is because for me, it was just never practical. Some people are blessed with great nails naturally. I am not one of those people. Like, my nails are brittle and they grow in crazy, different, I get hang nails and things all the time. So, I clip them off, and many of my fingerstyle guitar heroes don't use nails. Tuck Andrus, Lawrence Juber, Tommy Emmanuel, none of them use nails. And so I understand ultimately it's a personal preference, and I'm certainly not against nails. I also have a lot of friends who, they can grow great nails. And I have friends that go to the salon every 2 or 3 weeks and they get the acrylic nails. For me, I always held jobs that didn't permit me to have nails. You know, I don't, and you know, I never wanted to worry about breaking a nail before a gig. And I've played gigs with people that broke a nail before the gig, and it was brutal. It was like, you know, of course it's hard. That's a part of your sound, right? It's just like if you were playing with a pick and your pick broke in half and you got to go did this gig with a broken pick, you know. And I think those people, they work it out. I remember I was doing a gig with Pierre Bensusson, great acoustic fingerstylist, and he broke a nail, but he's got it. He's so used to doing that. He has this whole kit that he was working on backstage with like literally a ping pong ball. You know, he's like cutting up the ping pong ball and gluing it onto his finger. So it was fine. And every classical player, I think, has dealt with how to deal with nails. But, you know, for me, a lot of my tone, I really like to generate from the flesh. So I'm using fingertips. It does allow for a lot of the right hand techniques, the extended stuff that I'm doing. But having said that, you can do things like right hand fretting and tapping and harmonics and all that stuff with nails. Absolutely. I guess since I play primarily electric guitars, I can get the sound that I want by using the EQ on the amp to kind of dial in what I might otherwise get with a nail. I don't play any classical guitar. I hardly ever play nylon string. So I can see in certain styles of playing and genres, you really want that nail. But I think for solo archtop guitar, it's an electric instrument. It's really anything goes. You can have nails or a little bit of nail and use a combination of nail and flesh, or just 100% flesh, which is what I do.
Very cool. And on that note, can you tell us a little bit about some of the gear that you use? I know that we're giving some really awesome gear away. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just noticed there's a bunch of comments, and I haven't looked at any of those. So, but I'll just let you pick and choose there. But I'll just thank everybody in advance for sending in your comments, and it's great to hear from you. So yeah, gear wise, I think I'm definitely a minimalist. You know, for me, it's like really good guitar, really good cable, and a really good amp. And that's pretty much all I use. You know, the only other things that I have, if you came to a gig, I'm just going straight into the amp right now. But the only thing that I ever really use in terms of a pedal board is some kind of a floor tuner that really is functioning as a mute switch. So I can just mute it and I have control over whether the guitar is being heard or not. And plus I can tune silently, and a reverb pedal, you know. And that's usually about all I use. Sometimes I'll use a preamp just for a little extra gloss and EQ control and flexibility. And for that, I use a Grace Design Alex pedal. And basically, it's a real high-end audiophile mic preamp. It's a mic pre in a pedal form. And they're a local company. They're right here in Colorado. Great group of people, Ebb and Grace. You know, the Grace brothers are the designers there. Ebb and Grace is a great guitar player. So a lot of them play guitar. So they made these pedals, which have become very popular with bluegrass players, for example. The amp I've been using exclusively for many years is also made here in Colorado, a local company called Henriksen Amplifiers. Peter Henriksen is the boss. He's the brains behind that. He's the engineer and the designer and the CEO, but just general good guy. And over the years, that has been kind of a standard amplifier, standard go-to for not only jazz guitar players, but for acoustic guitar players as well. And one of the reasons is the circuit that is an awesome circuit. It's a solid state amp, but it has vibe, it has sound, it has soul. It's very flexible. And in contrast to a traditional guitar amp that might only have, you know, bass, mid, and treble controls that make things worse the more you dial them, the Henriksen amps have a 5-band EQ that give you a ton of flexibility to really adjust to the room. So for example, I'll start with everything set flat, and then depending on the room I'm playing in, so it might be like a church or something with stone walls and high ceilings, then I might like adjust the EQ. Always start off by cutting, you know, before you start boosting. Or if I'm playing in a like more of a jazz club vibe with like carpet and low ceilings or whatever, then I might, you know, cut the low end. And so I'll season to taste, as it were. And but man, those Henriksen the guitar amps, they're like perfect platforms for guitar because they use a high-end PA speaker. It's an Eminence Beta speaker. And that particular speaker, with the design of the cabinet, the controls, the layouts, everything. It's just, he's just got a perfect recipe for acoustic and archtop electric, nylon string, anything. In fact, where I live in Colorado, there's a lot of bluegrass players here, and I have a lot of friends that use these amps to amplify their fiddles and their mandolins. And I even play with a woman here who plays nyckelharpa, which is this really great, beautiful ancient Swedish. It's like a fiddle with all extra strings and drone strings on it. And she plugs straight into the amp and it sounds great. So it's a perfect platform. And I'm really stoked that they were generous enough to offer a Blue 6 for the giveaway. So make sure to sign up for that. It's like this big. That's what I'm playing through right now. We used it for the ArtistWorks course. Over the years, I've done a number of TrueFire courses, and there's one in the TrueFire studio, and it's a great all-around amp, and it's plenty loud for any gig. I've used this little amp for organ trios, big bands, loud drummers. I can't say enough good things about the amp, so I'm happy that they've offered one for the giveaway. So make sure to sign up for it because it's really the best amp you'll ever own.
Very cool. Yeah, it sounds absolutely beautiful. I was kind of blown away at how loud that thing can get too. It's a very powerful little compact.
It uses a 6-inch speaker, but the way it's designed is that like there's so much bass end, bass response, the way that it couples, and I mean it's just like engineering. It's very thoughtful, and so because they're a local company, Peter Henriksen and I have become very good friends. I met when I first moved here, I met his father, Bud Henriksen, who of course is the namesake of their very popular Bud amp. And, Bud was a brilliant engineer, and they just came up with some great things. But over the years, a lot of times I've gone over to the shop to beta test things, and we try. And there have been days where Peter and I will literally take like a cabinet and stuff it differently. This is super nerdy, but I think all of us will appreciate it. Like, this is what we live for. But, it was like the kind of thing where we'd have the same player, same guitar, same cable going into the same amp. But what changed was just how much the cabinet was stuffed or what it was stuffed with. And all of those things, we were like scientists jotting it down. They make a discernible difference, how a cabinet is stuffed, how a cabinet is built, what it's made of, all of those things. So after a lot of like craziness, he came up on a design that is now the Bud, and the blue amp that we're giving away is the exact same amp, more or less. It's just a single channel amp, which most jazz guitar players, that's all you need. The Bud is a 2-channel amp, and that's really designed for people that use either dual source pickups on their acoustic guitars, or people that like double on mandolin and guitar, or singer-songwriters where they can sing in one channel and play guitar in the other one.
Very cool. Right on. Well, I'd love for you to talk just a little bit about, what is in the course, and maybe start by just giving us like a bit of your backstory on Fingerstyle Jazz Guitar, like what got you into this to this point.
Yeah, totally. So for me, like growing up, I guess I was fortunate enough to be exposed to a lot of different guitar players through live performances, if they came to my area, and recordings. And, those were the days where like people would make you tapes, they'd be like, hey, I think you'd really like this music. And they'd, make you a cassette tape. and that's how I discovered players like Leo Kottke, the 6 and 12 string guitar album. That was definitely early on. And then I heard John Williams, the great classical guitarist, and some flamenco guitar players, and then somebody would give me a tape of Segovia and things like that. And around the same time, I was also listening to tapes of jazz, and my favorite jazz guitar players, Wes Montgomery and things like that. And interestingly, I'm from Maine originally, and I went to, when I was in high school, I grew up in Bangor, Maine, which is kind of like central Maine. A friend of mine just kind of said like out of the blue, like, oh, my cousin's a guitar player. I hear he's pretty good. Like my grandmother, she's got a bunch of tapes and he's really good. His name is Lenny Bro. and it was really funny. Of course, at the time I recognized that name from like the columns that he had in Guitar Player magazine. And I didn't understand any of that stuff at the time, but it was a name that I was familiar with. And of course, Maine musicians, many people who were a little older than me, many of my friends in Maine, they played with him or they studied with him. So Lenny was definitely an influence later on, and his brother Denny, who's a great guitar player, is still playing regularly in Maine. Great, like Chet country fingerstyle player. But of course, Lenny was, this friend of mine in high school, she made me cassettes and VHS tapes of Lenny early on those Canadian, like Canadian public broadcasting shows. And whew, so that was eye-opening, to say the least. And then for me, two records that really kind of made me want to commit to learning this were the Solo Guitar record is the title of it, by Earl Klugh. An incredible solo guitar player. And the other one was the first Tuck and Patty album, which featured Tuck Andrus on guitar. That was called Tears of Joy. And then I think a couple of years after that, he released a solo album called Reckless Precision. And so for me, I would listen to these things, like whether it was a great classical guitar player or Earl or Tuck or Lenny, and it just didn't seem possible. I'm just like, it sounds like too many people playing. And so I would just put the judgment aside, or the anxiety aside of like, how do you do this? And just let the music listen. So I would just, every time I would go to, sleep at night, I would listen to either one of those solo guitar tapes. And so I think the first step, if solo guitar and multiple parts and all of that is new to you, the first step is just listening to it and getting the sound in your head. So those albums that I just mentioned, Earl Klugh, check out his solo guitar album. He has another guitar album called Naked Guitar. Tuck has two solo guitar albums out, Reckless Precision, and he made a great Christmas album called, I think it's Hymns, Carols, and Songs About Snow. It's beautiful. Joe Pass for me came a little later, just because I hadn't heard him. But, for me, it was like Tuck and Earl and Lenny, just because I was from Maine. And so once you get that sound in your ears, then it's like more possible musically. And then you can start gradually, working on these techniques. So when I think I was 19, I was still living in Bangor at the time. I just would hit up restaurants and I would get gigs in Bangor, just solo guitar gigs, just so that I could practice playing these arrangements and learning how to improvise and doing all of that stuff in person. And then a year after that, I was fortunate enough to actually meet Tuck, who was one of my guitar heroes at the time. And I went to this guitar intensive in upstate New York where he was teaching, and we got to know each other for a week, and we became friends. And he subsequently asked me to teach alongside him the following year out in California at a place called Jazz Camp. And that was a huge honor, of course, because it was like I was sort of his TA, but I was getting to learn from and study with, but also like practice with and develop, who was my guitar idol at the time. So those are kind of the early players that I was really into. For Lenny, his stuff I think is, for me, kind of hit or miss in terms of the recording quality. There's a lot of records out there that just don't sound very pleasant to listen to because the recording quality is so terrible, even though his playing is so great. But one Lenny that, of course, is great is the Cabin Sessions, and the Living Room tapes with Brad Terry are really good too.
Very cool. And I know that you pulled a lot of these influences into like your technique and what you actually broke down in your lessons too, everything from like Wes Montgomery style octaves to Lenny Breau style leads. And can tell us a little bit about like what you sort of delivered in the lessons, like what are folks going to find there?
Yeah. So, and I also need to mention real quick too, that piano players have always been a big influence on me, as well as a cappella groups. Like back in high school, I was listening to all this guitar music, but also Take Six, the great a cappella, gospel vocal group. That was a huge inspiration on me. The stuff that you hear in like Herbie Hancock stuff and Bill Dobbins's arranging and Duke Ellington, and now somebody like Jacob Collier was all there. And so I always wanted to play guitar like Take Six would sing. That was kind of like my goal, or the way Oscar Peterson would play piano, or Marcus Roberts, or George Cables. So I listened to a lot of piano players, both in ensemble settings, but solo piano. Like one of my favorite albums was a record called By George. And that's a George Cables record where he does all George Gershwin tunes. It's like phenomenal. I mean, his piano playing is out of this world. So over the years, I've paid a lot of attention to guitar players and piano players, but also bass players and entire ensembles. So this course features a lot of curriculum breaking all of that down. So what we do is like we break down how to construct a bass line. And again, this is an example of something that even if you've never done this before, you're a total, beginner to this style, we make it accessible. So we talk about like how to construct a bass line melodically. What are the things that bass players thinking about? I spent a lot of time transcribing bass lines by, like Paul Chambers and Ray Brown and Sam Jones and, Ron Carter, and really, learning how to think like a bass player. So you don't, obviously we are guitar players, but you're trying to think like a bass player. So your bass lines become more like, a bass player would think and play. So we talk about like the theory behind developing those using a dominant approach, a scale tone approach, chromatic approach. And there's numerous examples and etudes and opportunities to do, homework assignments to get that stuff together. Of course, the video exchange is a great way to just like, hey, am I doing this right? How does this sound? And then I'll respond with personal feedback. And then in addition to that, we talk about the techniques that go into making a bass line sound familiar or convincing. So it's not just, I'm exaggerating here, but it's not, like, no, you would never hear a bass player play like that. So it's more like long. Just all of that kind of stuff. So we break it down very methodically. So that's an example of like how we take a deep dive into all of these elements. We talk about walking bass lines and how to really like articulate it in a convincing way that will help you in a duo situation as well. So if you're playing with another guitar player, you're playing with a horn player or a singer, of course, I think a lot of us will play with singers. And then the next step is adding in chords, right? So like you've got, all of that stuff. And it's methodical in the way that we break it down. There's technique exercises in there where you just talk about like being able to just play, both parts, because we're basically now talking about a bass and a chord. Piano players have two different hands to do this, right? We have to get it all happening here and here. So, and a lot of the secrets that I learned from Tuck directly are in the left hand specifically. So we can have both parts be sort of articulated like this, or we can have them both short. We can have the chords be short while the bass is long, or vice versa. And so all of those things are very subtle techniques, but are, I think, profoundly valid, and ultimately will make your playing, whether you're playing in a duo situation or solo, much more musical sounding, which is the goal. So we talk about a lot of that stuff. We get into a lot of the kind of the ear candy, we talk about artificial harmonics, chord voicings using extended techniques. So like, and this is all broken down in detail, but like another thing that is influenced me by piano players is being able to play an extended range. So for example, you've got this, and so I'm just playing a basic triad with a D on top of the ninth. Now that's something that you can't play with one hand, right? In standard tuning. So that's an example of a pianistic sound that I always wanted to hear, but it's not tapped either. So it doesn't sound like, it's not like a kind of doesn't interrupt the music. Meaning that if you didn't see me play this, it sounds like a guitar. I'm still plucking the notes, right? It's a plucked sound, and you can do it with two fingers, and you can do arpeggio things. So using those extended techniques will give you, I think, the colors and the textures that would only be available to a piano player. Stuff that's relatively simple to play on piano is like you have to kind of use an extended technique for. You know, like those Johnny Smith voicings, those four-way close, Well, the only two people that I know that could play those voicings were Johnny Smith and Alan Holdsworth. So, you can use that same extended technique to kind of, get the same influence, stuff like that. That was I haven't played it in a while, but that's like an arrangement of Stolen Moments by Oliver Nelson, which has a lot of horn parts that are harmonized. So that's yet another example of how you can try to capture the sound of either a piano player or a band with different horns, kind of like all blues, using some of these extended or alternate techniques. So we get into all of that and really a lot more in this course. I mean, we worked hard, didn't we, Marcus, that week in the studio in Florida?
Well, one of us did, and it wasn't me.
We got a lot of material out, and only, it's still going to continue rolling out too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was just incredible how much you got done in the time that we filmed. And we had a marathon of a shoot, but there's so much content in this school and so much more coming down the pike too. And what I love too, it's like, I think a lot of jazz concepts can seem very advanced or sort of like out of reach. And you really did an amazing job at demystifying a lot of these things. And also just as like a resource as well for somebody that just wants to kind of do it for fun, a massive library of chord voicings, comping ideas. It's as detailed as you want it to be, but it's also very simple and like accessible for people that are just getting into the genre, which I thought was just amazing. A lot of cool sounds that are familiar that you may not know how they ever came to be. And, like some of the stuff you were just demonstrating, it's really cool. You did a great job breaking this stuff down.
A lot of it is like trial and error. I mean, I've been teaching, privately in various settings. I guess for like almost 40 years now, but I've been teaching in higher ed, like I've been teaching at the university level for 25 years. And so throughout that time, I've been able to observe what works and what doesn't work, not only with myself, but with my students, and I've been able to kind of cultivate an approach that is very welcoming to beginners, so that hopefully, I really want to emphasize that point. Like, I don't want anybody to feel intimidated if jazz is new or fingerstyle is new or whatever, because over the years, I'm used to taking on, first semester college students that have none of this in their background in some cases. And it's all good. It's like, everybody's working at their own pace. And the material is set up so that you can jump anywhere in the pool, whether it's the deep end or the shallow end, just dip your toes in, and there will be plenty of cool stuff to engage you. And, with the tools that ArtistWorks provides, it's so amazing because, as Marcus mentioned, you can like loop stuff and you can speed it up or you can slow it down, and anything, you have control over it. And that Vadami pedal that we're going to be offering in the giveaway is great for that, because it's basically it looks like a guitar pedal, but it's got switches on it that act as controllers. And so basically, if you're working on your laptop or tablet or whatever, and you want to like just play this lick over and over again, or an exercise, you don't have to, take your hands off and get on the computer. Like, you can do everything and control it from your feet, so you don't even have to stop playing. It's a really cool tool that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that I thought was awesome as well is just the musical examples. Like, it's not just like learning a technique, but you wrote like all these unique etudes to actually like put it to musical use. And there's really fun backing tracks and stuff to play along with as well.
Yeah, we've got tracks. So yeah, there's a bunch of etudes and exercises specifically for solo guitar, but there's also a bunch of stuff that we created with backing tracks specifically for comping studies and comping concepts and chord voicings and harmonization and reharmoning stuff, as well as leads. We did a lot of single note solo stuff that, because this is a fingerstyle course, I played it with my fingers, but all of that stuff is totally accessible and worthwhile to pick players too. I mean, it's just like how to comp and how to improvise and how to play over like modal tunes, how to play over changes, how to play over blues and all of the different blues substitutions. So all of that. I'm just taking a quick peek at the comments here. And so, yeah, hey, Evan Haynes is from Maine. Evan, yes, your question, there'll be more added to the course. And Paul from Nashville, man, great to hear from you. It's nice to see some familiar names in the comments. Cool.
Yeah. And Larry too, you asked how much time a week do you need to practice? And that's kind of the joy of this, is it's just work at your own pace. You can digest these lessons on your time, and anytime you get stuck or you want to get some feedback, you can just submit a video to Sean and he'll send a video right back and tell you what to work on next and how to do it better. So
yeah.
It's a really fun thing.
I mean, I think with all of us, Larry, I'm just looking at the upside down emoji. Right? Because you're probably expecting me to say, practice 12 hours every half day. And it's like, it really is. I think for all of us, there's an ebb and flow to practice, right? Because life, life happens and you think, so what I try to preach, I guess, is just consistency. So if you can play guitar for like 5 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, 2 hours, great. But try to get in that 5 or 10 minutes. So at least you're playing every day. If anything else, for your own therapy and mental well-being, right? The rest of the day melts away when you can play some of these etudes and play a tune, So yeah, maybe, seriously, the answer, Larry, would be like, as much as you can muster, whatever works for you, because there's no one way to do it. Everyone's pathway is different.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, hey, what do you think about playing a little more, Sean? You want to play something else for us?
Yeah, sure.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Cool. Very nice.
Thank you. Hey, look at that, Miles. All right, you're about to ask for Miss Jones. There it was. Like we're on the same wavelength. So yeah, that was an old standard. Richard Rodgers, "Have You Met Miss Jones?" Great song, controversial because a lot of people, when they're trying to argue, I never argue about music. It's all good, but some people like to argue and fuss about Coltrane changes in the Coltrane Matrix, and there it is in the bridge of that tune, written in 1939, I think it was 37 or 39. So that's one theory that's where Coltrane got the Giant Steps changes from, is that bridge. But anyway, great tune to play, lots of fun, because I think there's parts of that tune that are very easy or easier to play, and then there's parts where it gets a little like more difficult to play. So it's nice to get into that, and I think we're going to work it out so that I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do that, but I'm happy to provide some of these arrangements that I have written out to the students of this course. Like we can make that happen through a folder or something like that. We'll make that available.
Great. Yeah, there's features on the site for that. So yeah, there'll be constantly new content added as we move forward. And of course, the video exchanges are just, incoming and updated frequently. So always new stuff to check out.
Yeah, definitely.
So tell us about, you've got a new book coming out this year. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So I've been fortunate to have been writing for Acoustic Guitar magazine since 2004, so 20 years now. And I started so that led to a few different books with them. So I have 3 books specifically with acoustic guitar. 2 of them are method books, and one is a book of holiday arrangements. And then there's a 4th book that I did with Hal Leonard that's just transcriptions from my records. And I think some of my stuff is just FYI is available on Spotify. I don't really use Spotify actually I don't at all use it as a platform. I use Apple Music, but you can find my music out there. But I do want to have my solo guitar recordings available for the ArtistWorks. So that'll be another thing that we put in a folder where you can just grab, M4A files or WAV files or MP3s, whatever. And there's a book of transcriptions from several of my records, which I'm happy to provide. This new book that's coming out with acoustic guitar, I'm very excited about. It's called The Holistic Guitarist. And basically, it's about body, mind, and soul, if you will, for guitar players in particular. So the body part of the guitar, which there's a few chapters devoted to it, is all about health and wellness, specifically injury prevention strategies. So how to avoid getting carpal tunnel and tendonitis and thoracic outlet syndrome and back problems and neck problems. There's like this terrible joke, but it's out there, like, all classical guitar players have the L5 surgery, or guitar players have the L5 surgery. And so, or if you do have those injuries, what you can do about them. So there's a lot of stuff in there. I've consulted with medical doctors and surgeons and people that had, very specific advice for that. So that's kind of the first part of the book, because over many years of being in and out of school as a student and then also as a faculty member, it's something that like no one really talks about. Like it was never a part of a guitar lesson where people would talk how to like use your body or sit in a way that you're not compromising your back or your posture, or don't sit for 3 hours or 6 hours and, no pain, no gain. Like all of those kind of like myths in growing up, I felt needed to be addressed. And there are books out there for musicians in general, but nothing, I think, that's very specific to guitar players. The mind section is all about things like developing concentration techniques, memorization, visualization. You can get a lot of practice away from the guitar by just visualizing, hearing things. Wes Montgomery did this a lot. For example, he had, a big family, and he was known for working all of his day jobs. So he thought about music all the time. You can visualize the fretboard. We also talk about performance anxiety. And then the third part of the book, kind of the spirit element, is there's all kinds of methodologies or philosophies out there that I think are applicable to all of us. There's a bunch of Japanese concepts in there, like Kaizen and Ikigai and Wabi Sabi, that are in there. And then the end of the book, I'm very lucky that several of my guitar heroes are good friends of mine now. So I asked them to contribute to the book. Like, how do they stay healthy? How do they practice? And a big part of the book also is practicing creatively. So I was fortunate to get people like Eric Johnson, Alex DeGrassi, Pierre Benzisson, Clive Carroll, Vicky Genfan, Juanito Pascual, great flamenco guitar player, Adam Levy, and as well as other doctor friends. And they were able to contribute wonderful sage advice in there. A lot of times when I'm with my friends, or if I have the opportunity to meet a guitar player that's been doing this a long time, I'll ask them, how do you avoid injury? Like, how do you stay healthy when you're touring or on the road? How do you practice? What should we be practicing? Like, all of those questions that I think that we ask that are never really answered. So we just finished the text of that a couple months ago, and I just went to California over the summer to film a video that's going to accompany the book. And the video is full of like stretches and exercises and warm-up material. And so I think that's something that'll fit really nicely with the students in the ArtistWorks school here, because I think it's globally applicable. It's not on the market yet. We're hoping, I'm not sure when it's going to be, like sometime this late fall or winter.
Very cool. We'll keep an eye out for that for sure, and keep folks updated when that is ready. So, again, congratulations on launching a new course. Outside of the course, which is a great place for people to find you anytime, what other upcoming events do you have? Any other sort of places where people could see you in the near future?
Yeah, so next weekend is actually the the 4th annual Rocky Mountain Archtop Fest. If you want information on that website is just archtopfestival.com. And that's put on by Hendrickson Amplifiers here in Denver, Colorado. And it's an amazing event featuring luthiers, like the best builders of archtop guitars in the world. There's people coming from all over the world. And some of the best guitar players in the world are going to be there as well, teaching workshops, performing. I'll be there performing all weekend. I'm playing a special Saturday night show with Tony McManus and the Transatlantic Guitar Trio with Joshua Stefan and Rory Hoffman and Richard Smith. That's going to be a killer show. And people, lots of great New York guitar players are coming, LA guitar players. So check out the website. And leading up to that, next week, I'll be teaching at Frank Vignola's Big Jersey Guitar Camp. And that's always a lot of fun. He's got, of course, Frank Vignola is incredible. And Bruce Foreman will be there, Pasquale Grasso, Jocelyn Gould, Beth Marlis, Ken Smith, Gary Mazzarapi is going to be there. It's going to be a lot of fun. So that's coming up next weekend. But of course, people can always check in with me on the ArtistWorks course. I'll always drop announcements into the shout box. The shout box is a great thing to just catch up with each other. And the forum, I think, is a nice feature of the ArtistWorks curriculum in the community. That's a forum that you can get in there and talk about things, whether it's gear or getting gigs or accompanying a singer. Students can network that way. And then there's a special section in the forum called Ask Sean, and I check that daily. And you can always post a question to me, and I will answer that in the forum so that everybody can see that.
Very cool. Right on. Well, before we head out, I think it would be awesome if we could have you play us out of this. But just if anybody dropped in into the show, just wanted to remind everybody, check the description of the video here. There's a link to sign up for this big giveaway that we're doing. We're giving away a Hendrickson amp, a Vadami pedal, packs of Sean's signature fingerstyle jazz guitar strings from American National String Company, a 12 by 18-inch archtop guitar metal print from AEA Gallery. Very cool prize. And of course, multiple subscriptions to be enrolled and learn from Sean at ArtistWorks. So check that out, and we hope to see you all online. Thanks for tuning in today, and thanks so much for your time, Sean. This was really a treat, and congratulations again on a fantastic new school. It really is an awesome thing.
Yeah, I love this course. I love interacting with students through the forums and especially the video exchanges. That's a real signature part of the ArtistWorks experience. So I love that. And yeah, thanks all for joining in, and thanks for your comments. And yeah, make sure to enter the giveaway. The guitar art by AEA Gallery is incredible. You can put it in your studio, and all of those other prizes that Marcus mentioned. So thanks all for joining. I appreciate it. I'll just play us out with a little bit of Our Love Is Here to Stay, one of my favorite Gershwin tunes.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care, Sean.
Thanks,
We'll
everybody.
see you around the campus.
See you soon. All right. Take care.